Founded the Wisconsin Canoe Heritage Association. She is a canoe collector extraordinaire. And you'll see that when you get inside the building. Come on up, Jill.
Welcome, fellow canoeists. We are all canoeists today. We've gathered here to celebrate the North American canoe and the museum, this handsome museum, dedicated to telling the story of the canoe. It is fitting that the Wisconsin Canoe Heritage Museum should be located beside the Railroad Memories Museum, for these two institutions preserve the history of two great modes of transportation, the railroad and the canoe, that opened vast regions of the North American continent to settlement and commerce. The famous Omaha X is not the only crossroads in Spooner. Long before locomotives steamed through town, Spooner sat atop another crossroads of the North. This one was a network of rivers linking the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, the Bois Brule, flowing north into Lake Superior, the Namakagon and St. Croix flowing south to the Mississippi and the Gulf of Mexico. And over these watery crossroads, dugouts and birch bark canoes had passed for untold centuries. The story of the canoe is long, but here is my condensed version. Chapter 1, the pre-colonial era. The birch bark canoes of North American Indians were among the most highly developed of manually propelled watercraft. As noted by Adney and Chappell's landmark book, the great skill exhibited in the design and construction of birch bark canoes proved that a long period of development had taken place before they became known to white men. These canoes were built wholly with materials taken from the northern forests, birch bark, of course, white cedar, pine tar, and the roots of spruce trees. They could be repaired in the forest without special tools. The birch bark canoe was a natural invention of native peoples because of the unique landscape of eastern Canada and the northeastern United States, including the landscapes of Wisconsin's Northwoods and Minnesota's Boundary Waters Canoe Area. Seen from an airplane, the surface of the earth in these regions is as much water as land. It's a landscape crisscrossed by rivers and blessed with thousands of lakes. A person could travel from the Atlantic to the Pacific or Arctic oceans by water and connecting trails, provided he had a craft light enough to be carried on his shoulders. In other words, a birch bark canoe. Chapter 2. The colonial era. The superior qualities of birch bark canoes did not go unnoticed by the first Europeans. These predominantly French explorers and fur traders immediately adopted the craft without significant alteration for wilderness travel. The first published reference to a birch bark canoe was made by Frenchman Jacques Cartier in 1535. The first English reference appears in 1603 in the Journal of Ship's Captain George Weymouth, who spotted the canoes off what is now the coast of Maine. Closer to home, brothers-in-law Radisson and Grossier explored by canoe the shores of Lake Superior and the headwaters of the Mississippi River in 1659, lured by rumors of vast beaver preserves. The rumors proved true. When Radisson and Grossier paddled back to Quebec, their cargo of glossy pelts saved the colony's economy from ruin and led in 1670 to the founding of the Hudson's Bay Company. And what, as you've heard, an elementary student in Wisconsin hasn't heard about the 1673 expedition led by Louis Joliet and Jacques Marquette? Hoping to find a canoe route to the Pacific, the pair traveled in two birch bark canoes from Michilimackinac through Green Bay, up the Fox, over the Portage, down the Wisconsin, and then down the Mississippi River all the way to its confluence with the Missouri. At that point, concluding the Mississippi was flowing south rather than west, they turned around and paddled back upstream. For demonstrating the sheer toughness of bark canoes, however, it would be hard to beat Robert de La Salle's expedition of 1682 through 83. He and a party of 18 Native Americans with supplies and trade goods paddled from Fort Wayne to the mouth of the Mississippi and back again. The same canoes, both ways. La Salle claimed the entire Mississippi Basin for France and named the vast territory La Louisiane in honor of King Louis XIV. In the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, Thomas Jefferson bought the territory back from France at a total cost of $15 million or 3 cents per acre. Chapter 3, Developments in Canada. An article in Wooden Canoe by Dr. Cameron described a revolution in canoe building that occurred in the 1850s in the region surrounding Peterborough, Ontario. At that time, both dugouts and birch barks were in general use in the area. John Stevenson, who had a planing mill, found himself shouldering one end of a heavy dugout on a long portage. This hardened his resolve to find a better canoe. He began shaping all wood canoes out of basswood boards nailed over widely spaced ribs. To prevent leakage, the joint between the boards was sealed with a wood strip called a batten. Stevenson's earliest board and batten canoes had only 3 planks on a side, which required brute force to pull into position. But his canoes sold as fast as he could build them, so he closed his planing mill and never looked back. Working in the same area with Stevenson were a number of inventive canoe builders, including some of the most famous names in Canadian canoe history: Tom Gordon, William English, and Dan Harold. Friends and competitors, the men pioneered and patented numerous innovations. They created molds, also called forms, which are wooden structures that determine the shape of the finished canoe, and you'll see some of these in the shop. Many of these forms are still in use in the United States and Canada to this day. These men worked magic with wood.